Same-sex marriage goes to the nation's top courthouse, but there may be no happily ever after for either side.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at Coastside, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining guest host Karen Kassler, Joe Ingles, State House reporter for Ohio Public Radio, Joe Hallett, senior editor for the Columbus Dispatch, Dale Butland of Innovation Ohio, and Terry Casey, Republican strategist.
The U.S. Supreme Court this week heard 2 days of arguments involving same-sex marriage. They took up a California case and the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. A majority of the court appeared likely to rule that legally married same-sex couples should be able to receive a range of benefits that the law currently reserves for straight married couples. A decision, though, is not likely until June. What are the possible consequences here in Ohio? Is the 2004 amendment to the Ohio Constitution banning civil unions and gay marriage likely to remain as is, regardless of the Supreme Court decision? Well, Governor Kasich was recently questioned about U.S. Senator Rob Portman's change of heart on gay marriage. Kasich said, quoting here, "If people want to have civil unions and have some way to transfer their resources, I'm for that. I don't support gay marriage." Hours later, a spokesman for the governor said, quoting here, he opposes gay marriage and opposes changing Ohio's constitution to allow civil unions. So, Terry Casey, let's start with you. With Senator Portman's change of heart and the governor's qualified support for civil unions, how closely are conservatives watching this case?
Well, there's a lot of people on all different sides watching it because there's a lot involved, and when you've got two different cases for the Supreme Court with different fact patterns, we might be surprised by what they rule. And part of what's of interest, a lot of people on the more conservative side have said the federal government shouldn't dictate what states do, and normally liberals are against state rights. So you've got some flip-flop in the ideology. But in Ohio, I think one of the key things, when you look at that 2004 amendment to Ohio's Constitution passed by 62% of the voters at that time, it not only prohibits gay marriage, but in the second sentence it gets into not allowing certain legal status for certain relationships. So that's one of the things, if you're a governor or you're a judge and you've sworn to uphold the Ohio Constitution, do you do that or do you follow what the feds do? It's going to be interesting, but clearly there's a lot of debate in the gay community of when to go for changing that 2004 vote of the people.
Dale, let me turn to you. There have been plenty of suggestions that the court might not have any major decisions on this. In fact, that first case, the California case, they might even throw it out because of the issue of lack of standing. So how positive and hopeful are supporters of same-sex marriage in this case?
Well, with regard to these two cases, I think that, it's hard to read the tea leaves from the oral arguments. I think all of us should have learned our lesson on that during Obamacare. If you remember, everyone thought, oh, based on the oral arguments, Obamacare is going down. Of course, it didn't. Look, they're probably going to play small ball with regard to Prop 8 in California. Might even rule that there's no standing there on the part of the people bringing it to the court, which would, in effect, strike down DOMA because the lower court rulings have kept up. I think DOMA is gone at this point because you can't, on the one hand, say states, not the court, but the state should decide who's married and who isn't within their borders, and then say, but the government is free to deny federal benefits to some couples that those states have said are legally married. But I think the broader point is this. Regardless of what happens in these two cases, the debate over marriage equality is over. 58% of the public now, in the latest ABC Washington Post poll, show that are backing same-sex marriage. That includes 80% of young people under the age of 30. Rush Limbaugh this week said same-sex marriage is inevitable. It's not a question of whether anymore, it's a question of when.
Well, one of the other things, Justice Kennedy raised legitimately the question, what about children? Because in Ohio right now, we're having some serious battles of what happens when you have children involving a same-sex relationship, who has custody, who has visitation rights, who has responsibilities for payments. And I think the Ohio legislature is going to have to look better at how do we fix some of these things rather than just leaving it to the arbitrary decision of one judge doing one thing in one county, another judge doing something totally different in another county. Between the Ohio Supreme Court and the legislature, they're going to have to deal with a lot of the issues involving the children.
It amazes me that this has moved so fast. I mean, it was only in 2004 that this was overwhelmingly approved by Ohio voters, and now a recent poll just of Ohio voters had shown that 54% said they would support an amendment overturning that amendment, with only 40% saying they're against that. This has moved incredibly fast.
You know, it's because I think people know more gay people. More straight people know more gay people now than they did back then. And the more that people get to know gay couples, the more they get to see how those relationships work, I think the more comfortable they become with them. And you're talking about the young people who are supporting it. The young people, they're growing up in an age where it's no longer a kiss of death to be gay or to say you're gay. They're growing up in an age where that's much more accepted. And I think that's really driving some of the change of heart that we're seeing.
And I think in the California case, the Prop 8 case, it was pretty clear that the justices are saying, we don't want to make gay marriage the law of the land. We want to reserve that for the states. And they said, this case is almost here too early for us. There is so much debate, so much churn. Society's opinions are so fastly changing on this that we're not ready really to take this case. And I think Dale and Joe, everybody else here is right that eventually the politics will dictate the public policy on this, not the court rulings. And the train is out of the barn. Society clearly is moving toward an acceptance of gay marriage. We saw, that, as Joe mentioned, a poll by Pew this week that said they have never seen a shift on an issue over the last decade as great as they've seen on this issue. And 70% of those who changed their mind in support of gay marriage say they did so because they either have a family member, as in the case of Rob Portman, or they know somebody who is gay.
But the next big issue is going to be, okay, let's say the court says California can do this, Ohio can do this, Georgia can do that. What happens when a couple from California, under one legal circumstance, takes a job in Columbus, Ohio? What law is going to dictate child custody support? It gets complicated.
It even goes further than that, because I think Joe's right. So I think what the court is likely to do is leave this on a state-by-state basis, because historically states have been the ones to determine who's married and who isn't within their borders. But as you get close to 50% of the country, let's say, that has gone for gay marriage, there's going to be many states, presumably in the Deep South, for example, which won't. But when you approach half the states that have approved marriage equality, the chaos, because we're a mobile society, people move all the time, the chaos that would ensue if you move from California to Ohio, where first you're married, then you're not married, then you move to New York, now you're married again, it gets ridiculous. So the court at some point is going to have to step in, I think.
Speaking of the issue of states and chaos, let's turn to topic number 2. Ohio lawmakers are returning to the State House in the next couple of weeks and will again take up the budget and tax negotiations. House Republicans appear to have staunched Governor Kasich's proposed expansion of the state sales tax, but they still would need to find some sources of revenue to offset a cut in the income tax if they want to keep that. So, Joe Ingles, is this just some political sparring over a budget detail, or will this fight among Republicans end up with some long-lasting turmoil here?
Well, I think that the one thing that's clear is the Republicans are unanimous that they want to offer some tax relief. That is clear. How they do that is up for debate. The severance tax, it looks like it's dead. That's the tax on the gas and oil drillers. It looks like the sales tax is probably dead, or at least reformed quite a bit from where it started. But one thing we've got to remember, if you take that sales tax and you're not broadening that sales tax, you're also not giving back money because they were going to lower the sales tax rate altogether. So that if you leave that alone, you've got a little more money to work with. What we're probably going to see are lawmakers coming in and saying, well, let's see if we, maybe have more revenue than we thought we'd have. Let's see if maybe we have some money here to play with, money there to play with. And It's likely, I think most people who watch this think it's likely that we won't see the huge tax cut that was proposed, but that we will see some sort of tax relief in the end.
I think Joe gives a pretty good summary. We're going to get an income tax cut. It probably won't be as big as what you'd like. But one of the dangerous things that's floating around out there, there's some people saying, well, gosh, we got a $1.5 billion rainy day fund. It might be at $1.9 billion. Let's spend this on this or that. And the problem with rainy day funds, they don't come back every year, because we were down to 89 cents not too many months ago when Casey became governor. So the rainy day fund, we really need a rainy day fund. You don't want to spend it all on programs now and then not have anything in the next budget cycle.
What we're seeing is pretty remarkable right now, because we have an all-Republican government. And I thought from day one that the Casey budget proposal was pretty fair. I mean, expansion of the sales tax, lowering it. We are a service economy. It made sense. I understand you maybe should carve out a few exemptions. And I thought the shale tax was extremely fair. And yet he can't get it through his own caucus. They're so tax averse. And I mean, we have a budget proposal here that cuts the income tax by 20%. And 50% for businesses, and he can't even get it endorsed by the Ohio Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, but let's be clear, though, Joe, when we say that the Republicans are tax averse, they are only tax averse at the state level, because when you make these huge tax cuts at the state level that primarily benefit the wealthy, and you also cut schools and you cut local governments, all you're doing is pushing the need for tax increases down to the local level. And in fact, as Innovation Ohio has pointed out, it's on our website, innovationohio.org, there's been $1 billion worth of local levies on the ballot from one end of Ohio to the other, just to try to offset the school cuts.
Here's something that nobody's talking about, that they should be talking about. If we do nothing, the state of Ohio adopts a stand-pat budget, we are going to realize about $1.5 billion more in revenue in the next biennium, because the economy is growing so strong, we've come back so strong. So there is tax cut money available right there.
Well, except I would argue, Joe, that if there is that money, until we're at the point where we can fully fund our schools and we can fully fund our local governments, what is the point in cutting taxes at the state level when local taxpayers just have to pick up the burden?
Because it's an election year next year. And Governor Casey wants to go into his re-election saying, I cut the income tax.
But is there any evidence that cutting the income tax would create jobs, Terry?
Well, if you look at a lot of the other states enjoying growth, part of it is because they've recognized to be more competitive if your tax is more reasonable. And one of the things Dale forgets, already in Ohio, people who are richer, above $206,000 a year, are paying about 6% in state income tax, plus 2.5% in local, compared to the middle class paying around 2.8%. So we already have a greatly stacked up, and that's one of the problems. How do we attract and keep entrepreneurs here instead of going to other states like Wyoming and Florida?
You know, this whole trickle-down idea, the whole trickle-down concept is embedded in the Republican Party and psyche. The reality is, we should have learned by now that jobs do not come from cutting taxes for the wealthy. Where jobs come from is rising consumer demand. No business, large or small, is going to hire anybody unless they know that their customers will buy the goods and services they need to sell in order to cover the cost of that employee. So what we ought to be doing is cutting taxes for middle and low-income people, because they'll spend it. And they will buy the washing machines and the cars and and all the other things we need to get our economy moving. Instead, we keep, as we're doing now, as Governor Kasich wants to do now, this tax cut that he is proposing will cut taxes for the top 1% by over $10,000 a year and lead to a net tax increase for middle and low-income folks. He has it exactly backwards.
I hate to move on here, but we do have to move on from tax reform to pension reform, which lawmakers could revisit later this year. And in May, a trio of board members from the school employee retirement system have booked a business trip to Hawaii, a conference there. The chairman of the Ohio Retirement Study Council says that shows what he calls arrogance. But a spokesperson for the conference organizer says this was the best, most affordable offer at the time, and that the room rate in Hawaii is lower than the cost of the rooms at last year's conference site in New York City. So Dale Butland, you were in Hawaii earlier this year. Lovely place. Is this a typical location for a conference of people who are in charge of running state pensions?
Yeah, well, I want to hasten to point out that I did go to Hawaii, but I paid for it myself. I didn't ask anyone else to pay for it. Look, there's something clearly wrong when one of Ohio's pension boards, which is not even the biggest one, is spending more on travel and conferences than the other 4 pension boards combined. It's especially ridiculous, as well as arrogant, for the board of the School Employees Retirement System to be taking trips to exotic places like Hawaii at a time when so many schools and school employees are facing layoffs and pay cuts. So this is utterly indefensible, and it's the epitome of being tone deaf.
I'm going to pile on and agree with Dale
Wow.
and shock some people.
Wow.
But let me point out, on that board, of the 9 board members, 6 of them basically were picked or elected through the campaign efforts of the unions. And members ought to look at their union bosses and say, why don't you get control of people on this board so they're not wasting the money? And it isn't just this pension fund, but if you go to the offices of PERS, state teachers, and see the lavish double fountains, the marble, everything else, leather chairs that's out of control, somebody needs to look at a lot of other parts of their spending, because we're in a different era. They need to be a little more careful with the money for their members to make sure it's protected.
I found it pretty ironic that one of the class offerings at this Hawaii seminar is avoiding the front page scandal at your pension fund. I mean, look, these members are trying to justify it by saying we need to go, and we're talking about people who typically wouldn't be sophisticated investors, but they're saying we need to go learn how to invest, you know, our pensioners' money and get the greatest return and so forth, which is admirable. But believe me, they pay a ton of money each year on professionals, financial consultants, to give them advice on that. So it really does.
The airfare is a lot cheaper to St. Louis or Columbus, and believe me, you can get a lot better hotel rates in those 2 cities than New York or Honolulu.
I have a question that just occurred to me. Why is it, Terry, that you and your fellow Republicans get as exercised as you do over this $160,000 that SERS has blown and wasted on these trips, but you don't seem to bat an eye over the $1 million that Jobs Ohio wasted, taxpayer dollars that they wasted on fancy furnishing, lavish office remodeling, including a coffee bar for 20 or so employees. By my count, that comes to about $50,000 an employee that Jobs Ohio wasted. So where's the outrage about that, Terry?
Well, Dale, if your group, Innovation Ohio, publicly reported where it got its money and how it's spent, then we could compare who's doing a better, more efficient job. But I think you ought to open up the books of Innovation Ohio so we can see and know how they're spending the money.
We aren't spending public money, Terry. That's what Jobs Ohio did. So I'll ask you one more time. Where's the outrage over the $1 million in taxpayer money that they blew on things like fancy
I think
furniture
we're getting
and
a little
bars?
off topic here. Let me just ask Joe Ingles a real quick question here. So do you think this continues a desire by lawmakers to have more pension reform, even though pension reform wouldn't necessarily touch this conference at all?
Well, I think yes. This is one of those things. It's a perception problem, honestly. But you know, in long term, they still need to look at these pension funds, because you've got the baby boomers retiring, and even with the fixes they've made, a lot of analysts say this can't happen long term. We've still got to make some cuts. So there's impetus to do it anyway. This just adds gas on that fire.
All right, let's move on to topic 4. The tension, not between these folks here, the tension between Columbus Mayor Michael Coleman and the city school board was turned up this week. The mayor wrote an editorial in the Dispatch warning the board not to hire a permanent superintendent this spring and to wait for recommendations from his education commission. School Board President Carol Perkins suggested in an email that the mayor's outspokenness might be detrimental to the superintendent search. The board appears to be going ahead with plans to hire a permanent replacement for retiring Superintendent Gene Harris. So, Joe Hallett, where is this dispute over the leadership of the school board headed?
Well, the mayor's urging to wait for my commission report is kind of a non-issue, because the commission report is coming in April. And if they hire a new superintendent in July, that new superintendent will have the report. The question is, will he follow it or not, or just ignore it? I think we are at issue here is trust. I mean, we have a school board duly elected, and yet this school board has watched under its nose and presumably permitted to happen one of the biggest scandals in Columbus Schools history. And so, what's the rush? Why not wait until the commission report is out, the FBI investigation is finished, and then hire a superintendent with all this information? Besides that, what potential superintendent candidate in his right mind, his or her right mind, is going to want to take this job with an FBI investigation hanging over the school district, unresolved, not knowing where all this is headed?
And I'm going to jump in and kind of second Mayor Coleman, because I think he's absolutely right. There's a problem with the school board, particularly Carol Perkins. She's totally tone deaf in terms of, if they were doing a good job on the school board and in managing the schools, managing the bureaucracy, giving the taxpayers and the students good value, people wouldn't be worrying or wouldn't be trying to help them. The problem is they aren't doing a good job, and when people are trying to help, you turn around and slap the mayor of Columbus in the face. That's not smart.
Well, but she said in this email that some of this might be, or the suggestion has been made that some of this might be connected to an idea that the school board should be appointed rather than elected. Are people really electing school board members and that invested in their school board members' elections as they are with governor and president? And do they even know who they're voting for sometimes?
Well, look, I mean, on the one hand, there's a couple of things that are true. Number one, the school board does not want a war with Mayor Coleman. He is the most popular office holder in this city, and it's a war that they cannot ultimately win. It's a battle they can't ultimately win. By the same token, we have chosen to run our schools in this town via an elected school board. So you can understand why some of these people who got into the arena, put their names on the ballot, and got themselves elected are a little resentful when they see people second-guessing them. But maybe, how about everyone just take a deep breath? As Joe just said, the current superintendent is leaving at the end of June. We're now at April, almost. What that means is that an interim superintendent is virtually inevitable, at least for some period of time. So let's start there. Everybody kind of step back, and maybe the school board and the mayor's commission can figure out a way to work together to forge some sort of working relationship, because heaven knows we got enough problems with this district that we all have to solve.
And I think, too, we've got to remember, up in Cleveland, Mayor Jackson has taken a very active role in that school district. And Mayor Coleman may be looking at that and saying, what can I do to make Columbus schools more accountable to the people? And, one of the complaints, he's tried to grow Columbus in the past 20 years, get more families living downtown. And when you look at why families aren't moving downtown, one of the major reasons, if not the major reason cited, is the Columbus City schools. People with families don't want to move downtown in the school district. So, I mean, there are some reasons why Mayor Coleman would be interested in taking more of a front on this and doing something with it.
And it's not just Cleveland, it's other major cities, New York, Chicago, LA. They've all done it in different ways, but a lot of mayors have shown leadership, and I give them credit for showing that leadership if you're going to fix urban education, which has a lot of challenges. But the Columbus schools, they spend an average of $16,000 a pupil, way more than suburban school districts. Their problem's not money, it's how it's managed and how are things delivered for the parents and the kids.
A new superintendent for Columbus Schools does not want to come into that job with anything but Mayor Coleman on his side. And I just think they are going to have trouble finding a really qualified applicant under all the cloud that's hanging under this school.
Real quickly, Carol Perkins in her email wrote that the process should be open and transparent. Has the process, has all this stuff surrounding the Columbus Public Schools been open and transparent?
Wait a minute, this is the same Carol Perkins that hires this big downtown law firm to tell anybody and everybody, get out of our business. We're going to have private meetings, in my opinion, and a magistrate's opinion, violating the state sunshine law, to talk about how to cover up this mess they've got with their school superintendent. So her record's not very good.
Anything to add, Joe?
Not really. I mean, this board just it's hard to say anything except for they dropped the ball on this whole mess.
All right, well, let's move on now to our off-the-record final comments, parting shots, and we go first to Terry Casey.
Well, I think it's going to be pretty clear Rich Cordray's not running for governor, and I'll give Dale a little credit. We don't know for certain, but a major Court of Appeals position in the District of Columbia opened up this week, and don't be surprised if Cordray goes there. So it's probably going to be Fitzgerald versus John Kasich, and it ought to be an interesting match for governor.
Indeed. Dale Butlin.
Well, I've been thinking about Puxatawney Phil. That's the groundhog in Pennsylvania that said we'd have an early spring. The groundhog was wrong about the early spring. But then I got thinking, Terry was wrong about Mitt Romney winning the last presidential election. So I think what it all goes to prove is you shouldn't believe weather predictions from a groundhog, and you shouldn't believe election predictions from Terry Casey.
We're comparing Terry Casey to a groundhog. This is...
Wait a minute, but you said Ted Strickland was going to get reelected as governor.
All right.
With apologies to the groundhog.
Joe Howlett, go ahead.
I don't think I've ever seen more hostility shown from a commentator to a team than Charles Barkley has shown to the Buckeyes. And I think the great thing is that the Buckeyes are going to have the last laugh when they win the national championship.
Oh, all right. Prediction there. Joe Ingles.
I've got
Speaking
to say,
of.
yeah, speaking of the Buckeyes, and I'm a Buckeyes fan, go Buckeyes, but I've really enjoyed watching Florida Gulf Coast University and this tournament. They've just been really good. They played great ball. It's a school that wasn't out there, wasn't on the map, and it's an area of the country that's very near and dear to my heart. And so I also want to say, go Eagles.
All right. And I'm going to go with you, Joe. I may be wearing purple, but I'm scarlet and gray inside here. That's Columbus on the Record for this week. Please check us out online. We're on Facebook and Twitter. You can connect to all of that on our website, wosu.org/COTR. I'm Karen Kassler. Have a good week.